Hey, Benin.
Welcome everybody, this is Jason and today's workshop is called Positive Thinking Part 1, part of a 4-part series. This is the basics, this is where you start. This is the nuts and bolts of making a static pose for Sims 2. So let's jump right in. So what are pose boxes? When you break it down, what are they? A pose box is an in-game sim-controlled object that, upon given a set of instructions, puts your sim in a specified pose or releases the sim from that pose. So it's as opposed to a sim menu or a game menu, it's something that the sim can control via an object. How do pose boxes work? Upon accessing the object's menu, the T tab, the sim selects a command, a behave, that places an animation overlay, or ANIM, over the sim's animation skeleton. Before we jump right in, there are a couple of things that we need to do in Milkshape. If you're following along at home, go ahead and pop over on the resource post, and I have shared these two DLLs. Three. There should be an ANIM export, an ANIM import, and an ANIM export INI. We need to put these three scripts, these three DLLs, into the root folder wherever your Milkshape is. The example I give here, this is how mine is set up. It's in my PC, my C drive. I have a folder called Modding Tools, and it's in the Milkshape 1.8.5 directory. Then, open Milkshape, open the animation template. I provided a male skeleton and a female skeleton in the resource post. Then select Window, and make sure that Show Keyframer is checked. Then, we click on the ANIM button, and we go to the Joints tab, and we scroll down the tab until we find the joint that we want to move. In this example, I'm double clicking on right upper arm. Then we hop over to the Model tab, we select the Rotate button, and we make sure that the local radio dial down at the bottom of the tab is selected. And then you can change the position of each joint by clicking and dragging in the viewports. So example, this is the front viewport. To rotate the joint, click in the front viewport and roll the mouse up and down until it's rotated about where I want it. And then to move the next joint, like for example, right forearm would be the next logical choice because that's the next joint down. We would hop back to the Joints tab and double click on right forearm and then roll the right forearm in the front, in the side viewport, however we want to roll the joint. Note, this does not apply to root trans. The root trans joint is a translation joint. That is, instead of rotating, it slides. It translates. It moves from one position to another. If you imagine opening a drawer as opposed to swinging open an armoire door, it slides instead of rotating. So in order to move the translation joint, if we move the legs and so now the sim is slightly off the ground, we need to move the sim back. So that's where we would use the translation joint. We double click on the trans joint, and instead of rotate on the model tab, we select the move button. And then we can just slide the sim up and down or wherever we want to go in the viewports. Then when you're happy with the pose overall, you select Animate, Set Keyframe. And what that does it's going to, once you hit set keyframe, it's going to change the entire skeleton yellow. So you should have this yellow outline all the way from the AU scale joint down. The whole thing just turns yellow. Now we save the pose as a Milkshape file. That way we can go back and edit it later if we need to. Then we select File, Export, Sims to Animish, Anim Exporter. That's why we needed to install the DLLs in our root folder at the beginning. This is going to export the data as an ANIM, which is a format that SimPE can recognize. You're going to get this this pop-up window. Make sure that in the ANIM type, body animation is selected. Don't really need to adjust anything else, and then just click on Export. The 5AN. We open up SimPE. Let's go, and you would need the DIY posebox template that I put in the resource post. Open the template, click anywhere in the resource list, and choose Add in the drop-down. Then we go to wherever we exported the 5AN from. So in this case, I went to my project folder, and in the lower right corner of the window, we need to change in the drop-down, we need to change that to all files. Then we would select the 5AN. Now that the resource has been imported, okay, so we added the resource, but SimPE still doesn't see it as a 5AN. It appears as user-defined. We need to fix this. So we select the new resource in the resource tree, and then again in the resource list. Then we hop over to the resource tab, and there's a type drop-down right at the very top of the resource tab. We're looking for animation resource. We switch it over to animation resource, and then we hop right back to the plugin view. Once we switch back to the plugin view, we're going to see that the instance and instance high values, they show as zeros. So what we need to do, right next to the file name in the ANIM plugin, there's a link that says Fix TGI. We click that, and it assigns it unique instance and instance high values. Then we need to copy the name of the ANIM that we just imported, everything to the left of the underscore. So in this example, it'll be Lele-Panchita. And then we can commit and save the 5AN. We're done with the 5AN. Next, we go to the str resource in the resource tree, and we're looking for anims-adult. We click on that one specifically in the resource list. And then, as you're looking down the list, line 4, we're going to paste the name of the new anim there. Now we need to set up the action behave. So we select behave in the resource tree, and then behave 1004 in the resource list. And in my DIY posebox, it's already named as HBB recliner, but that's fine. Then let's have a look at command line 0. This is an expression. An expression is a logical calculation. So if the sim passes a certain logical test, then he can advance to the next command line, which will be the animate overlay. We're not going to spend a lot of time in this. It's already set up in the template, but if you're creating one on your own, you might need to copy the operands from this expression before you move to the next command line, the animate overlay. The one that we really need to focus on is animate overlay, the second command line. This is a command that's actually going to pose the sim. And I've shown the example here. And each of the operands for this behave does a different thing. The first box, that tells you which line of the animation str is pointing to. The green box, that's whether that, among other things, it's normal or flipped. In this one, it ends in a 0, so we can tell that it's normal. And then the yellow box is whether it's flipped in temp, as in randomized. If it's flipped in temp, that means it can be either regular or flipped. It generates it at random. And then the orange box is the number of the string resource. You will see that in some pose boxes you've got a list of anims for child and a list of anims for adult. This tells the behave which str resource to pull that line of text from. Finally, there's priority. For basic animations, we won't focus too much on that, but it's good to know. 0 is low, 1 is medium, 2 is high. What that means, if you have one that's set to high, it will override it will give priority to that animation overlay over any others. So if you have applied 2 poses at the same time to a sim, you'll see that it kind of splits the difference. That's because they're both set to medium. If one is set to high, it's going to give precedent to that animation overlay as opposed to the other one. If you're unsure what each operand does, another option for you, you click on that little tool icon next to the operands, and that's going to give you an instruction wizard for the pose. And this tells you which text list it's pulling from, which line of the text list is pulling, whether it's flipped in temp, and what priority it is. You set it up there, you click OK, and you're all done. Instead of HBB Recline to Relax, we rename it to whatever the name of our new pose is, and we commit and save. Now, the stop behave. Go to behave 1003 in the resource list. And you can see that the command line calls for prim 06C, that's anime's stop. And all of these are strung together, so they go one right after another. So it's going to, the way that I have it set up, it's going to stop every single pose in the box. In the operands for the first command line, the first box there, we need to change that to line 4. So it's telling it to stop line 4, which is the new pose that we created. And that's it. We just commit and we save, and we're done with the stop behave, the TTAS. So we select the TTS in the resource tree and then again in the resource list. In the TTAS plugin, we select line 4. We change that to the name of the pose that we're going to play, and we commit and save. If you want sublevels, at the end of your text, just add asterisk, 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 slash, and that will give it a new sublevel of strings. And as a final note, best practice, do not name all of your poses, pose 1, pose 2, pose 3, etc. There's more than enough space to make your strings descriptive. The T-tab. Select the T-tab in the resource tree, and then again in the resource list. And then select line 4 of the interaction table. It should correspond to the value of the T-task string that we just added. Make sure that it's linked to behave 1004. That's the behave that we created. And that the guardian behave is set to 0000. The action behave, this is when the sim selects something in an object menu. The action behave is the behave that the sim does. The guardian behave is saying, okay, if the sim meets these conditions, he does not have access to the action behave in the object menu. Just set it to 0. So we're looking at the checkboxes, make sure that teens and adults and elders are selected, and then that's it. We commit and save. We've modified all of the resources, and we're ready to use the object. We're ready to test the pose box in game. So if you're following along at home, just open one of the animation templates that I provided. I'm going to do female. And then make sure that show keyframer is checked here. And click on your animation button in the lower right corner. And we're ready to go. And I'm going to grab right upper arm. Then we hop over to the model tab. We select rotate. And we make sure that the local radio dial down here at the bottom is selected. And we roll it down, we roll it back a little. And let's do the forearm. And because it's local, it rotates based on the position of the next highest joint, not on like the actual direction you turn it. It's a little bit tricky, but it makes sense if you practice with it a little bit. Okay, and let's move on to the hand. And when we're articulating the fingers, I like to scoot way up in the 3D viewport so that I can see what I'm doing. Roll the thumb a little bit. And then that second thumb joint, thumb 1, just going to close it a little. And then close thumb 2. Then we move on to index finger. Just roll that in a little bit. Middle finger. Actually, the mid, it's split like 50-50. Or, I'm sorry, the ring finger is split 50-50 between the mid joint and the pinky joint. It's kind of weird. But again, if you practice with it a little bit, it will get easier. We articulate the pinky. And then let's do the left arm. Roll it back, roll it in. Actually back a little bit further. And then we bend the elbow a little bit. Back up to the upper arm. And we just point that down a little bit. And once again, let's zoom in on the hand so we can kind of see what we're doing a bit better. Rotate the thumb. Rotate the thumb like so. Third thumb joint. This time I want to splay the index finger open a little bit. So I go to the front viewport. Or no, I'm sorry, the top viewport. And you see it didn't roll the way that I wanted it to, so I just Control Z and start over again. And then let's just let's just roll that index 1 in a little bit. Then we close mid 2. Then we close mid 1 a little bit. Or I'm sorry, mid 0. And then let's splay the pinky joint open a little bit. Nope. We open it like so. Then we grab pinky 1 and we just curl it in a little bit. And then we move on to the legs. So let's move that one back. And let's rotate the calf back a little bit. And the foot. And let's bring that one forward. Maybe out a little bit. Forward a little bit more. And rotate the calf back. Rotate the foot up a little bit. And now you can see, if I zoom in on the left viewport a little bit, there's some space between the sim and the ground. So if you just set your keyframe and export the ANIM like that, there's going to be daylight between the sim and the ground, and we don't want that. So now, do you remember what I said about the root trans? We need to use the root trans to slide the ANIM skeleton down so that the sim is squarely on the ground. So we double click on the root trans, we go to the model tab, and we select the move button this time. And here I've already isolated the Z, so we can't slide forward and back, we can only slide up and down. We just slide that down to the ground, just like that. Then ANIM, set keyframe. And you see it immediately turned yellow. So we know that those joints are locked in place. Let's save this. You're going to get this pop-up. Don't worry about it. Just click yes. Okay, we've saved it as a Milkshape file. Now let's go export. Sims2 Animesh ANIM exporter. And I'm just going to call this one, for grins, I'm going to call it Lele Panchita 2. You're going to get this pop-up here. Just make sure this is body animation. Don't move anything else. And export. And just like that, we've done the Milkshape part. Okay, so in SimPE, I've gone ahead and opened up my test pose box, the DIY pose box template that I shared in the resource post. Now we just click anywhere in the resource list. We go add, and I'm in the right folder, but I can't see the resource. Why is that? Because it's only looking for 5GDs and things that have already been exported from SimPE. We need to change that to all files, and there are the 5 ANs. So I grab Lele Panchita, the one that I just created, and it adds it as a user-defined resource. So we select that in the resource tree. Go over here and select it in the resource list. Then we hop over to our resource tab, and in the drop down here, we change this to ANIM. Just like that. Back over to the plugin view. Okay. Now we can see up here it does not have its own instance high and instance values. Okay, that's a problem because it needs to be a unique ANIM. So to fix that, we just click that Fix TGI link, and look what happens here. Brand new instance high. So in the file name, we're going to copy everything to the left of the underscore, just like so. Then we commit, we save, and we've got a brand new ANIM. Now let's hop down to the STR. We go to the STR resource in the resource tree, and we select the one that says ANIMS adult here in the resource list. And we go to line 4. And I like to start at line 4 because then it keeps everything even. We know that line 4 of the t-task corresponds to behave 1004. We paste the name there. We commit. We save. And we're done with the str. We select behave in the resource tree, and we select the one that says test pose 1 in the resource list. And we can see that that's already pointed to line 4 of our str. And we're not doing anything with the expression. That should remain the same. So test pose 1, let's just rename that. Lilipanchita 2. Sorry, I'm horrible at typing. We commit, and we save. And then let's have a look at stop all poses. And we can see that the first pose to stop is line 4. Don't worry about all these placeholders. I mean, basically, if it references an empty pose, it just skips to the next one. So we have our stop pose, we have our action pose, so let's look at the t-tasks. So here on line 3, we've got stop all poses, and right below that, line 4, it says placeholder. So we just changed that to the name of our new pose. This is the action string that the sim is going to see when he selects the object. We commit the t-task. We save the t-task. And we select the t-tab. We go t-tab in the resource tree, t-tab in the resource list, and we're good. Let's go to command line 4. And we just make sure that pi menu string 4 is pointing to action behave 1004, and that there should be no guardian behave. Just make sure that that's a 0. Make sure that it's checked for the appropriate age groups. And I'm going to delete all of these placeholders because we don't need them right now. Commit. Save your file. And we're ready to test a pose. Okay, so we got my man here, Vedal from the title card, and we're just going to do the test pose. Okay, what the heck? He's not playing the pose. Okay. We look at the ANIM. ANIM looks good. The string appears to be correct. The behave is referencing the correct pose. And the T-tab is configured correctly. So what the hell? Okay, when this happens, sometimes it's because it didn't fix the TGI correctly. So what we do, tools, object tools, fix integrity. Fix TGI fixes it for the individual resource, but fix integrity fixes it for the entire scene graph. We don't update the name here because then it will screw up the text list. We just click OK. Let's see if that fixed it. Okay, so we get our sim set up in game, and let's go ahead and test the pose. And there you have it. That is posing one or creating a pose 101. There you go. Oh, and while we're here, let's check the stop animation. Let's go stop all poses. And he's back to doing his idle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.